Why are you doing that funny grin?
I'm waiting for you to start the podcast.
I know, but you got this funny, like, shit-eating grin.
Well,
I wondered if
swans.
I wondered if it was if you're doing it for effect, like for a pun or something, or if it's just
No,
your
I
natural.
keep thinking that you're going to start the welcome to another
Your
episode.
expectant grin. All right, well, fine, okay then. If only to stop that shit-eating grin. Welcome everybody to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. This is a podcast where two exes discuss whatever's on their mind that week, whether that's politics, religion, pop stars. What else? I mean, we take in pretty much everything under the sun. My name is Josh. I'm one of the hosts, and the other one is Sean. How are you, Sean?
The other one.
One of the
I'm
hosts.
all right.
The other one. That's
the other
all right.
one. I'm all right. It sounds like you're in a right flap, Sue.
Well, the heat is getting to me. It's about 32 degrees, 33 degrees.
It's
if my
not
phone
that
is to be
hot.
believed.
Come on.
Look,
No.
I can show you on my phone. Hang on.
Mine says 30.
Well, I'm in a heat. What do they call it? Oh, yeah, mine's gone to 30 now. It was 32 earlier when I was outside. I'm often when they have like the record, when they say like hottest day of the year so far.
Yeah.
It's often like the top temperature is often recorded at Heathrow Airport, which is quite close to where I am. I think we're in a bit of a heat zone.
Okay.
Hot zone.
A heat trap.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny how wild people go when it's this hot.
I know.
That it's like people act like the world is melting and falling apart in London when it's this hot.
I know.
I've just been in Paris for 3 days, and it was quite warm, and it was so lovely, like blue sky, beautiful. It was really stunning, because last time I was in Paris, it was in winter time, and it was raining and maybe a tiny bit of snow. I can't remember, but it was so cold and miserable, but it was still beautiful. I mean, I love Paris even in the winter, but it changes a place, right? Like, how different is London when it's like this?
It's very different. It's very, very different. And but I don't know if I'm just romanticizing Paris or just shitting on London, but I do feel like Paris might be slightly better set up to cope with heat than London is. Would you say that's true? Like, is air conditioning more common there?
Well, the trains, like the public transport, was definitely cooler. Have you gone on like the Central Line or something on a day like today?
Yeah, last night I got the Piccadilly line into town for a gig, and it was just horrible. It was sticky. I mean, I waited until after the rush hour, so it wasn't crowded at least, but it was still so hot on there.
Yeah,
it was vile, absolutely vile.
The only one that I think is bearable is the Elizabeth line.
Yeah, I almost went to get that home, but apparently it was on reduced service last night or something, so I thought I wouldn't risk it.
What's up with transport here being just either it works seamlessly or it is just falling apart? Like there's no like moderate service. It's either everything's fine or, oh my God, everything's on fire and falling apart.
I know. I don't know hopefully it's not on the recording, but your voice keeps going very robotic and sounding very stilted. I don't know. I'm hoping it's not going to show up on the record. Not show up, but it's not going to present on the recording like that. But it keeps going very
how entertaining if I sound like a robot.
Yeah, right now you sound like a robot.
I wonder.
But hopefully it won't be for our listeners, but we'll find out, won't we?
It must be like the data being sent through, like the voice over internet protocol or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Where it's capturing it in bits and then reconfiguring it and it being weird.
Maybe it's the heat. Maybe the heat is getting to it.
I'm like Vicky the Robot from Small Wonder. Do you know that?
No, I don't think so.
It was a sitcom in the US, and I think it was in the late 80s, and it was about this family that adopted or somehow got a little girl robot to join their family, and it was called Small Wonder, and it was like this comedy of errors because she had no human emotions and was all it was so stupid. And she would do like something that was insensitive and they'd have to try and teach her about empathy or feelings, and she'd be like and like looking at them while they're all annoyed or laughing, and she wouldn't know, and then she'd be like, like I didn't know. And the front of her dress or the back of her dress would open. There were all wires inside and all. It was
Was
so dodgy.
was it played by a human or was it just a
Yeah,
literal robot?
yeah. It was played by a human, so it was all this really bad special effects of like it was like a real little girl playing this role,
Oh, okay.
trying to pretend to be a robot with no emotions, and then when they would have to. I don't know, some comedy of errors where her back panel would flip open and her wires would be exposed. There'd be like a dummy or a mannequin used to show. So terrible. I can still remember the song. Like, she's a small wonder, she's a small wonder. And it was just like this
That
boring.
that reminds me of Mr. G. She's a what's the song? She's a something girl with a bad habit.
A naughty girl?
Naughty girl? I don't know. She's
A bad girl? Or a
naughty
naughty
girl
girl?
with a bad habit for drugs. Anyway, sorry,
Bad
go on.
habit for drugs. Anyway, so I loved that time period of really bad sitcoms from the US. There were so many. Did you used to get a lot of the US shows in the UK?
No, no, because we only had 3 channels when I was a kid, and Channel 4 started. I don't know. I want to say like mid to late 80s. I think Channel 4 started.
Yeah.
So we had very little American TV. There was just so much British TV that was being made at the time, and we got the really big shows like Dynasty and Dallas, the Cosbys, stuff like that. But Cheers, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we got a lot of that stuff. It was only when satellite TV started becoming more common that we would get access to all of that sort of thing.
What about the A Team?
Yes, we got the A Team. Yeah.
Different Strokes?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know actually. I don't know if I then saw that later on, maybe on satellite TV or cable TV. I don't know. My memory is shockingly bad at the best of times, and I'm sure it's affected today by the heat. So,
how funny is the difference between what was popular in the US and what was popular in the UK? So if you had things like Different Strokes, what else? Like Cheers. Cheers was later than Different Strokes, but then in the UK you'd have like Some Mothers Do Have 'Em.
Yeah, we'd have like Blackadder and LOLO and
Are You Being Served?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's vastly different, and so much of it just would never have stood a chance of being screened in the US. I mean, in Australia, you probably got a lot of British shows because of the colonial history. But
when I was little, I would watch The Goodies. Do you remember that show?
Yeah.
And I would watch what was the one about the Wombles?
Oh yeah, what was the one about the Wombles?
The Wombles. What was the song about Wombles? That they live at Wimbledon.
Underground, overground, rumbling free. I can't say it. The Wombles of Wimbledon, coming away. That one.
Okay. And what was the concept of that? What was the synopsis of that show?
Wasn't it these, mythical? Well, they weren't presented as mythical; they were presented as real, of course. But these creatures that lived in Wimbledon Common, and they picked up litter. I think that was the premise of it.
Was it like did it have like an eco angle or something?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was about humans destroying Wimbledon Common, and the Wombles were there to clean up after the humans.
Well. How things have changed.
So tell me a bit more about Paris. You just got back yesterday from Paris, or?
Yeah, last night. I mean, the Eurostar is great, but it was chaos on the Eurostar. It was so busy.
In what way?
And so many people. Like it was packed, and these trains are going like 15, 20 minutes apart. Like they're always going. And so when a train is at capacity, and you've got 3 of them leaving within the space of 45 minutes, there are so many people converged on
Gare du Nord. Yeah.
Gare du Nord.
And it always, every time I get the train from Paris, it never seems to be, it's not a smooth operation. It's not terrible, but it's not, it's always quite frantic.
Well, it was so comical. Like people trying to get into the queues, and there were 3 or 4 different queues to get in through the customs. And there was this young well, younger than me anyway, and he presented as gay. He presented as very camp, and he was an employee of the train station or the network or Eurostar, and he was tasked with trying to get people to get into the correct lines. And you know how people don't listen. They want everything themselves. He was screaming the whole time we were waiting there. He was screaming, and he was flapping around and screaming, this line for the 412, this line for the 440, the 312 is over there. And then he would finish screaming that, and half a second later, someone would say to him, where do I go for the 412? And he was like spinning around and doing pirouettes and saying, well, like I just screamed in your face, the 412 is here. And it was so comical.
I love it.
And they opened another line up for the 440, which was ours. And he said, if you're back here and you're on the 440, there is a new line started. And people from our line tried to climb under the ropes to go and get in the new line. He was like, why are you moving? Do not move. Your line is the first line. If you go to that line, you will then be the last to board the train. Don't move. You're making things more difficult for yourselves and everybody. And he was screaming. And these people didn't listen to him. They just climbed under the rope and went over. And
maybe they didn't speak English.
No, they did. They were yelling back at him. Well, that line's going to go first. That line's going to go first. And he was like, no.
Was it very hot? Was it?
Oh, yeah.
People overheating?
It was. Oh, yeah. It was really hot. And so he was screaming at. It was this elderly couple, and he was like, "If you go in that line, I'm telling you, you're going to be the last to get on the train, and you think you're going to be the first." Like, it was really sassy. And they were like, "Well, we want to go here. We don't want these people to go before us." And he yelled out, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you can see what these people just did, don't do that if you want to get on the train in a timely manner." And he was shaming people. Anyway, when they opened the gates finally and our queue started to move first, these two people, this elderly couple that had moved to the other line, were so bitter because they were in front of us and our line went first. And as I went past them, I waved. But they were stood there like their arms folded, like all grumpy because they thought they had skipped the queue. But then,
is their age relevant to the conversation, Sean?
Yes.
Why?
Because they were old bastards. And,
okay.
But
that's a bit unfair.
Well, do you know there is a certain thing that happens to old people, and this isn't ageist. This is true. And I'm an old person.
Have you done your research?
Well, anecdotally, I'm an old person as well. And I am very quick to anger the older I get. And I think this happens also. Old white people are so entitled, right? They want everything before everybody else. They think they're more entitled to everything. If there's a queue, they want to be at the front of the queue. They just have lived a life. They've had more time of living with privilege than anybody else. Old white people.
Yeah.
So... They're very entitled to. They want it now. They wouldn't take no for an answer.
I think there's definitely some truth in that. I also think, and I've noticed this as I get older, that there's also an element of I actually don't give a shit anymore what people think. Like, if I see someone drop litter, I might say something sarcastic, or you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know if that's
but you're not talking about doing the right thing. You're talking about doing the right thing. I'm talking about people taking advantage of the system and making it difficult for other people.
Other people, young people younger than me, would construe that misconstrue it as being a grumpy old bastard, wouldn't they? Like, if I'm the one that's like, oh no, that's all right. You're welcome. I'll happy to hold the door for you without you thanking me. If I do something like that, they might just think, what a grumpy old bastard.
There were this other old white couple on the train sitting next to me, and she just folded up her packet that had her baguette in it, her ham and cheese baguette from the bakery. She folded it up and put it on the floor under her seat. And then when she was getting up, I saw her look down at it and she just shrugged and left it there.
Did you say anything?
No. What am I going to say to her? Hey, pick up your rubbish, But, this concept that people have of, like, they also know that no one's probably going to do anything to them because of the privilege they have. So You know, if you,
yeah, and that's, I suppose, an element of me as well. Like when I say things like that,
yeah, yeah,
I am very. I suppose I'm not consciously thinking about it, but yeah, I exist as a white cis man
yep,
in the United Kingdom.
hmm
And a citizen, and I've
yeah,
got no concern about my right to be there or exist in, or take up space in that situation.
hmm
Yeah, I suppose that informs my sarcastic, passive
yeah,
aggressive nature
or
as well.
yeah, if you were in like, if you're a person of color and you were in Paris and all the police are walking around with like weapons, you
Mm.
might be less likely to draw attention to
Yeah,
yourself.
or if my skin wasn't white, I would be
Yeah,
much, much more, concerned about
yeah,
people's reaction or society's response to me. So yeah,
like Hill,
that's
like Hill and Gloria were obviously with me, and they're both Mexican, and they both look Mexican, and they, when we got to
they
the
have
certain,
they both have a little moustache and a sombrero and a
yeah,
bottle of tequila.
they were riding donkeys through customs.
Hmm.
But when we got to customs, it said, like I was traveling with my British passport for the first time, which I got.
Oh
So
yeah,
it said
yeah.
I had to go through one gate, and then all other passports had to go through another gate.
Hmm.
And Hill was like, I don't want you to go. We, as a family, should all be able to go together. And I was like, it doesn't work like that. Like, if they're telling me that British passports have to go that way,
Mm.
I have to go that way. But
Yeah,
he hates being separated in any sort of situation because he gets a really hard time.
yeah.
You know, being a person of color and being Mexican, they're very suspicious. Like when we got off the Eurostar, when we arrived to Paris, even though you've already gone through customs in
Yeah,
London, they
yeah.
still like not they didn't say anything this time, but they looked at Gloria and Hill like, yeah, they look at them like they're criminals.
Yeah.
Well, when we go to the supermarket here, Waitrose, if Hill and I are walking around together, we get every time. And I mean, we go to the supermarket 6 times a week. We get followed around the supermarket.
Hmm.
And if we split up, like I go to look at, I don't know, Candy Kitten's gummies, and he goes to look at something else, the
Yeah.
security guard follows Hill.
Yeah, yeah.
Never
Oh yeah,
follows
yeah, yeah.
me.
I mean,
And
yeah,
it's
I've seen it.
all the time.
I've seen it enough times, as a white person, I've seen it enough times to know that it's a real thing. Like it's not, it's not imagined. I've been, I've been with friends going through airport security, and they'll just, people of color would just be like, I always get stopped, always, every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you live with that, like, or
Mm,
if you live without that level of scrutiny or fear, like that
yeah.
old white couple that I was referring to, and you've
Mm,
lived with that for 75 years,
mm,
and you've been told that you're part of an empire that is important,
mm,
if you want to change lanes and somebody's telling you not to change to the other queue, you're just going to do whatever you want because you don't have that fear of being arrested or persecuted or picked on for what you look like. You're just going to do whatever you want. And I find that really, really fucking distasteful. Like
mm.
it's so horrible. And that's why, like, as I went by, I waved to them. I was like, yeah, well, fuck you, you old bastard. Like, like, like just
Anyway,
it's
before we
so
go
annoying.
down, before we get accused of being too negative, tell me about some fun things that happened in Paris.
Well, fun and negative was going to Disneyland.
It wasn't the happiest place on earth.
Well, I don't know. Disney Paris is a little bit lackluster compared to California. Yeah, like it's not
Well,
as
yeah, I
big.
mean, I haven't been there since that time we spoke about last week's episode, which was 2001 or something.
Yeah,
So I
like
don't know, but
24 years ago. So,
yeah,
but it is fun, but it is just, it tries your patience. You have to queue sometimes for up to an hour to get on a ride that is over
mm,
in 2 minutes.
yeah,
You have to pay a lot of money for food. They did have vegan options in
mm,
all of the restaurants. Not as good as Disney California. Like when I went to Disney California, I had like Impossible meatballs, I had hot dogs, the Mickey
yeah,
shaped pretzels were vegan. There was
yeah.
a lot more. But here there was at least one main vegan option in every restaurant. I went to
Okay.
Colonel Hothies. I don't even know. It's some racist thing from the Jungle Book or something. But it was this restaurant that had a vegan dal with basmati rice and naan bread. Then I went to another restaurant. It had Beyond Meat chicken nuggets with chips and tartare sauce. They had, I went to another place and they had a Beyond Meat burger with chips. So it was fine, but you've got to be okay with the amount it costs as well. So the bowl of dal was £15. Sorry, 15 euros. 15 euros.
Okay.
So
yeah, still expensive though.
About 12, is it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Or the burger, chips, and a drink was 17 euros.
Yeah.
So it's not outrageous when you think what you will have to pay when you go to a theme park.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of money. Like if you're there from the very early morning to late at night, you're going to have at least 2 meals.
It's not a cheap day out, that's for sure.
No, but I also found some vegan cotton candy, which made me very happy.
And the rides were good?
Yeah, the Indiana Jones roller coaster was really fun. So, there's that Indiana Jones ride at Universal in California.
At Universal?
No.
Or at Disney World?
At Disney?
Disneyland, sorry, Disneyland.
Is it Disneyland?
Yeah, we did one at Disneyland, didn't we?
Oh, okay. But it's more like, it's not a roller coaster, but it's a ride on, you're in a Jeep and it goes around and then, you sort of move around the scenery.
I bet
it shakes. It's like a 4D sort of thing, but it does move. This one at Paris was a roller coaster that goes upside down. It was really fun. And we went right at the end of the night and there was no queue for it. So we walked straight on to the ride and we could have gone a second time if we wanted to. But we wanted to go and watch the fireworks and drone show over the castle. It's so tacky and cheesy and, they're playing all these songs from The Lion King and the drones are making the shape of a rose and Beauty and the Beast song is playing but you see all the kids there who just love it, and it would be very magical as a kid. Yeah. I am very cynical, and I don't know,
newsflash, shocking news to our regular viewers.
At times, aggressively minded, but it was nice. There were some fun things, but there is a lot of it where I just was like, oh, I could, if someone could helicopter me out of here right now, I would go.
Someone could drone pick you up, if the drones could pick you up.
Yeah, or like Diana Ross comes down in that helicopter and picks me up and flies me out. Because, we got there when it opened at whatever time it was, 9:30 a.m., and we were there until 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, so it's a long day.
It's a long day.
How many steps did you do, Sue?
Oh, like 33,000 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
35,000. But all of the rides were fun. I got to go on every ride that I wanted to, except my favorite one because it's shut for renovation, and that's Big Thunder Mountain. But the Peter Pan ride is so magical, and I love it so much. Like, I would live on it. I want to just sit on it and stay there. The Pirates of the Caribbean. The Small World thing is so whack and hilarious.
Yeah, it's amazing that when they opened Euro Disney, it's amazing that they didn't just think, why should we include this one? Like, it's just so
iconic,
old-fashioned. Yeah, but I suppose. But I don't know. I think there are lots of people, like younger generations, who would have no interest in it. And I mean, I remember it. The Disney one, was it Disney one? I mean, the California one. I remember it being quite sort of problematic. I don't know if they created it like for like in Paris or if they updated it at all. But I remember the one in California, it was all, you'd go around and you'd see all these people from around the world in miniature, and all the white women would be, quite covered up and quite just not voluptuous, not sexual in any way. And then you'd see, you'd go to other parts of it and you'd see all the black and the brown women, and a lot of them would have a lot of flesh showing, and they'd have really excessively large hips and breasts.
Well,
and they'd be And maybe it's different in the Paris one, but the
But
California
they're
one's
miniature.
very,
They're
very.
miniature people, and I don't mean miniature as in like they're miniature figurines, but they look like children dressed as adults.
Yeah,
Like they're like round heads and like Animal Crossing sort of
yeah, but
shapes.
I clearly remember like some of the African nations, the women would be like swinging their hips from side to side and stuff like that, and I think also in the Hawaiian women,
Yeah, but yeah,
you know,
it's very racist in that way that it's
it's a real,
essentialized
yeah, it
everything.
really essentializes cultures,
So
doesn't it?
yeah, you go past the Hawaiian one and it's somebody in a grass skirt, or you
Mm,
go past the California one and it's somebody dressed like a Hollywood actor, and then you
mm,
go past the Australian one and there's like a First Nations person there and a koala up a tree looking confused, and the First Nations person's holding a boomerang, and then you
yeah,
go, any that denote native or indigenous people, they're not like an indigenous person who happens to work in a bank. They're
yeah,
they're dressed in barely any clothes. It
yeah,
is very problematic and
yeah,
very like just reduced to the most basic concept of what culture is.
yeah.
Uh, but it's very relaxing to sit on there and just float
Because it's a
around.
boat, isn't it? It's a little boat ride.
Yeah, and just to
Yeah.
be out of the crowds, it doesn't take too long to get on it because there's a lot of boats going all the time.
Yeah.
Um, the worst experience of the day for me was going on Space Mountain, which is known over there as Hyperspace Mountain because it's Star Wars themed.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to die from the pain of the ride. Like
Really.
the thing coming down the harness over me was pressing on me so hard that it was
Mm,
actually hurting before it even took off. Like I was like, this
mm,
doesn't fit. Like I couldn't sit up straight. It was pushing on me so hard. And
yeah.
then it goes upside down like in barrel rolls. And so you're upside down and it's just horrible. And then it's very jerky. And then there was this one bit where it stopped so suddenly that my head smashed against the seat. For about 2 or 3 hours, I felt like I was going to throw up after it. Like I think I got
Really.
some sort of concussion or
Concussion.
whiplash. And
Jeez.
the same we were with Luis, like Hill's friend from Mexico, was with us, and he was next to me, and we both were like in pain after it.
No, wow.
And then Hill kept saying, "Oh, let's go on Hyperspace Mountain again." I was like, "Absolutely no way, not doing it."
Sucker for
So,
punishment.
but the Indiana Jones roller coaster was a lot of fun, and it was in a jungle setting with like real trees and beautiful
Oh, that's cool.
palms and tree ferns, and it does a complete loop as well. But it was much nicer and beautiful. But
Good.
if I went back again, I would have to be rich enough to buy the Premier Pass, to skip the queue,
Mm.
and also I would want to maybe
Do
be.
they have that thing like they do in the US ones where if you download the app, you can
Mhm.
sign up for like fast access? I can't remember
Oh,
what
you
they
have to
call it.
pay for that, yeah.
Oh, they don't give you any included.
None included. And
Ah,
you can
okay.
buy individual rides. Like you can say, oh, they've got a fast pass at 7 o'clock for Space Mountain, and
Hmm.
it's like £5 extra. Or the most popular ones, like the Peter Pan ride, which is the most popular. That was the fast pass for that was an extra £13 €13 per person
Wow.
to do that. So we
It's a
ended up
shakedown, isn't it?
Yeah, we ended up just waiting until because you can also check in the app the waiting times for all the rides. And as
Yeah.
soon as we saw the Peter Pan one drop to the lowest, we ran to it and got into
Hmm.
queue. Because it was always around an hour or more for that one. Um, so yeah, it's fun, but yeah, if I would only go again if I was rich enough that I could do the fast pass for everything because you can buy like an all-inclusive fast pass for
Hmm.
I think it's €90 for the day.
Yeah.
And I would also stay at the Disneyland Hotel because it is honestly too much to be out there all day. Either
Hmm.
if it's cold, it's too much. If it's hot, it's too much. There are too
Hmm.
many people. If you were able to go home at like the middle of the afternoon at the
Right.
peak and go back
Right.
to your hotel room and have a shower and have a rest,
Hmm.
it would be so bearable. Like
Yeah.
but all of the children having meltdowns, but around mid-afternoon, early evening, when it was incredibly hot. These kids were losing their minds, like throwing themselves down on the hot cement, screaming, just hysterical because of how distressing, because it is distressing.
And overwhelming as well. Like they're overstimulated from it, but also, like exhausted from walking around all day. And
and then they're expected to stand in queue and behave for an hour waiting to get on a ride that lasts 2 minutes. So it's a lot to ask of kids. One thing that I didn't get, and tell me if I'm going wrong here, but why would you take a newborn baby to Disneyland?
Yeah, that to me is just such a waste of your own time and money. Like,
obviously the baby doesn't pay to get in, right?
No, but you can't go on almost any ride with a baby,
and the baby's not going to remember that it was at Disneyland.
I suppose if you can't afford the cost of having someone look after the baby, you have to take it with you and take turns or whatever. But I don't know. It seems like doesn't seem like the right kind of environment for a newborn.
Yeah, like when I saw these people, like lots of people, I mean a lot of people carrying babies who look to be either a few weeks or a few months old. A lot of people all over the park.
I wonder. We'll have to. Maybe you could do some live research if you wanted. But I wonder how many babies have been born at Disney. I mean, people must go there pregnant and have like waters break and stuff like that. But I wonder if any babies have actually been delivered in Disney parks.
And I wonder if you're born there, you get like a
a lifetime passport for Disney.
Like when you get born in a country, like if you're a tourist, don't some countries allow you to have citizenship?
Some countries give you,
yeah. Imagine if you or if you are somebody went into labor and like one of the characters had to come and like deliver the baby, and you were delivered by the characters. Came to deliver the baby to help, or like Goofy, but your first. I
was going to say Donald Duck, but Donald Duck wasn't Disney, was he?
Yeah, I think so.
Was he Donald Duck?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, whatever.
Yeah, isn't Goofy Donald Duck's dog, or no? Goofy is Mickey's dog.
I don't know.
But you know what I don't get? You know what I don't get comfy with is all the new stuff. Like, I don't know, like a lot of the new Disney stuff. I just don't know it. Like, I don't know even. And I consider Lion King to be new because I'm old, right? Even though it came out 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't like The Lion King. I don't know it. Never seen it. I've got no interest in it. I like Entangled or whatever these movies are, Frozen. I don't know anything about them.
Oh, there are so many now, aren't there? What's that other one that my goddaughter watches? Something about like electricity and anyway, whatever. Yeah, there's all this new stuff which I have no knowledge or interest in.
So I like all the old school stuff. So like when I went on this little ride-on car where you go through Pinocchio, the world of Pinocchio, and you see like Jiminy Cricket, and I was like waving to Jiminy Cricket, and I love the trains that you can ride around the grounds and old school. Do
they have? So I can't remember. It was so long ago, and it was such a wet, cold, miserable day that we were there. I don't even remember. Do they have? Is it the same model as the American ones? Like, do they have like Main Street USA and stuff like that?
Yeah, but I think they call them slightly different things. But they've got Frontierland, Adventureland, Fantasyland. The Main Street.
America is. I've been thinking about it a lot. Obviously because of the political situation. Of what's happening in the US at the moment. But also I'm reading a book. It's by an Australian writer called Don Watson, I think. And he traveled all over America. And this would have been in the 90s, I think. Yeah. And he traveled all over America by train and by road. And I think maybe by Greyhound at one point. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting to me. And I haven't prepared anything. So this is going to be a very, very inarticulate thing I'm trying to talk about, but the whole concept of what America is so interesting to me, and so it's such a oh god, I don't have the vocabulary for it, but the concept of this land, it's the new world in inverted commas. It was it's considered to be the land of opportunity. It was a land where they just completely obliterated the indigenous people that were living there and like massacred them. And then they brought slaves from Africa, and their whole history is so violent and so full of oppression and horrific things, and yet it still has this real romanticized um not ideology, like what's the word I'm looking for, like mystique, this iconography, is that the word? No, there's another word that begins with I, and I can't think what it is.
You're telling the story, not very well, but you're telling it.
Well, feel free to jump in and join the conversation.
I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's happening.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like
yeah, but
you understand this.
The US isn't alone in this. I mean, cultural like destruction of indigenous people has happened all over the planet, continues to happen all over the planet. So you think I was just in Paris. France has an appalling colonial history as well, and going around and trying to conquer, in inverted commas, different parts of the world. It has a huge racism problem. It has its own internal struggles, like revolutions. Where we live in London and the UK is one of the most destructive colonizers on the planet, and still involved in supplying arms to different countries. Like, I don't think the US is alone in being
but what my point being, though, you don't really see theme parks around the world that romanticize this European supremacy, or the notion of, it's almost like, to me, again, not a well thought out argument or thesis, but it's almost to me like there's within all humans, I think there is a desire for working towards a better future for ourselves and for our community or family or whatever makes up your community. And I think that the sort of the frontier spirit of America and the US, the United States of America, I think has become this cultural sort of keystone or cultural shorthand for human optimism, or the human struggle for a better future. And it's reflected in theme parks, and it's reflected in things like, Hollywood movies being so popular around the world. And I don't know, I find it really interesting that it so invisibilizes and deliberately ignores the violence of its own making. Yes. And it's, to have, because we don't have theme parks which celebrate European colonialism, I don't think. Or do we? I don't know. Maybe I'm so unaware of it.
Well, you do have things that rely on the tropes of, jingoism and stuff. Like, you'll go and Legoland will have a whole section about Big Ben and the pride of England, or you'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, I suppose because European colonialism happened, mostly several centuries before American, the American creation of the United States of America and everything that entailed. Maybe the celebration of European colonialism has become much more subtle and much more embedded. And so even when you go, I suppose, a really obvious example of that would be when you go to Australia and everyone speaks English. Yeah. That's not a theme park, obviously, but it's a manifestation of British colonialism.
But in the UK, there's a different way of doing it. So the US, as a modern country, is much younger. So they have things like theme parks and movie studios. Whereas somewhere like France or the United Kingdom, they're much older as societies, even though they're both modern societies, but they've had a continual modernity. And so you've got things like, instead of theme parks, you've got Buckingham Palace, or you've got the Palace of, is it Versailles? You've got these things that are symbols of colonialism and wealth and supremacy, supposed supremacy. But that's what people celebrate. So when you say to people, we should get rid of the royal family, people say, oh, no, but the tourists love it, or it brings so much money to the economy, or it's our history. And that's the same. It's sort of like our version of Disneyland.
And I suppose we don't need to, we don't need to uphold our supremacy, our historical supremacy, because it's so evident anyway. Like when you walk around a city like London or Paris, the constant presence of, wealth in all of its forms, whether that's just in private homes or the public buildings or the, palaces or whatever, it's so obvious that we don't need to then work hard to uphold that. Whereas America is a lot younger. So I think they are still trying hard to continue that ideology of, the land of the free, the home of the brave, blah, blah, blah. They're much more conscious of doing it, I think. I don't know.
But it was so weird being in Paris this time and thinking about what's going on in the world. Like, obviously, as we speak now, and this, I don't know if this podcast will even come out because of World War III about to happen.
Yeah. The nuclear bombs could be dropped at any, nuclear missiles could be fired at any moment. Yeah.
Yeah. But seeing people like talk French everywhere, and then all of the English tourists just expecting, including me, expecting everyone to just be able to speak English to them. Like I would walk into a shop with absolutely no shame or embarrassment and just say to the person, "Can I speak English to you?" In English. I wouldn't say it in French.
You should at least learn like the basic.
Oh yeah, I'm like, "Bonjour. Can I speak English, please?" And they say, "Yeah, sure." And years ago it used to be that I would perceive people to give me a bit of attitude for that. Now,
in Paris.
Yeah, in Paris, everybody just is just like speaking English. Like, and then in Disneyland, there were people from all over the world. So, Hill is Mexican. I'm from Australia. There were people from Japan. There were people from Korea. Everywhere, the common language was English. Like when people had to talk to one of the ride attendants, and if that customer didn't speak French, they would just try and speak English. Yeah. Even if English wasn't their first language. How bizarre is that?
I know.
You're in a country that English isn't the first language.
And again, going back to what I was saying before, that's obviously a result of colonialism. And so we don't need to remind ourselves of how, of our colonial past or, the greatness of our colonial past, because we exist every day in the privilege of that, in the fact that we can travel around the world and not even bother to learn another language.
And let's reframe that instead of saying the greatness of our colonial past.
Well, I mean, obviously,
you have to be careful with what you say. Because...
all right. Well, I would think anybody that's watched this podcast, even if they've only seen a few episodes, would know that I'm not saying greatness of the British Empire in a fucking celebratory way. I'm doing it in an ironic way. But yes, fair enough. Fair call. Fair suck of the sab, as they say in Australia. Which I don't even know what the fuck that means or where it comes from.
Well, the Savoy sausage.
I know, but why has sucking a sausage got to do with like being fair?
Fair suck of the
fair
sav.
Suck of the sav.
Flat out like a lizard drinking from arsehole to breakfast time.
Oh, God. Well, anyway, even though you haven't asked me, I'm going to tell you about my week, even though it's not as exciting as...
Well, I did have a question about your week, because before we started on about this, you said you went to a concert, and I want to know what concert you went to.
Well, I've been to two concerts in a row. What day is it today? Thursday? So yeah, Tuesday night and Wednesday night. So Tuesday night, I went to Union Chapel and I saw Melissa Etheridge. And I've never seen her before. If you don't know who she is, she's an Americana folk rock musician, very, very popular in the 80s and early 90s. She's queer, and I don't know that much of her stuff. I've been listening to it a lot in recent months in the lead up to the gig.
Well, what's like a song that people would know, like that's crossed over into sort of mainstream consciousness?
Probably Come to My Window. Or what's another of the big ones? Well, do you know, actually, I'll tell you why I sort of not rediscovered her, because I was never into her as like a younger person. But I watched that film that you talked about months and months ago on the podcast. Is it Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael?
Yes.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Welcome Home? It's something Roxy Carmichael.
Yeah, Welcome Home,
and
Roxy Carmichael.
The opening song is Melissa Etheridge. And I really liked the song. And then that led me down a whole, Spotify wormhole. And so anyway, I've not been a lifelong fan. So it's the first time seeing her. She was so good. Honestly, I cannot tell you how good she was. I was so shocked and pleasantly surprised, because I'd been at work all day, I'd been on my feet all day, and I went and I was like, I'm glad I'm going, but I was also like, at this age, at this tender age of 48, I was feeling a bit worn out. And it was so good. I mean, the Union Chapel is a great venue. I know we've spoken about it before, but it's a church, and it's just got the most amazing acoustics, incredible atmosphere. They have candles. But she was phenomenal. It was just her on stage with a guitar. She did a couple of songs on the grand piano, but most
so there was
no
other band.
Other band. And she was using a looper, and she was doing all these like beats on her looper and stuff. But I've never seen someone... and I've seen, you and I together and separately, I've seen a lot of musicians. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone sort of at such a high level on their own on stage be able to just command an audience like she did. And she is such an incredible guitarist. I had no idea she was such a great musician. And it was just, I just felt like on a high almost from it. It was such an incredible show. And I've seen a lot of gigs at Union Chapel. I've never seen people rush to the front before. Yeah. And like for the last 3 songs, everyone like rushed to, I was upstairs on the balcony, but all people rushed to the front of the stage. And it was just incredible to see. It was such a great, great gig.
And for somebody who's been around for so long, like 40 something years, her career.
Yeah. And I don't know, I don't know how old she is, but shall I just do a quick bit of live research?
But you know how nice is a gig like that where, like it contrasts that to my experience of going to see Pulp a few days ago.
Oh, yeah.
At the O2.
Yeah.
And
so sorry, just to say she's 64. And
64.
She was incredible. Her voice was stunning, like absolutely stunning. Yeah. So anyway, I'll end it there. But go on, tell me about Pulp.
Well, 20,000 people at the O2. And it's just not a pleasant experience. And we had standing tickets on the floor.
Sue, you don't need to start me off about the fucking O2. But yes, continue.
And then getting out of there at the end was an absolute nightmare. I don't even know what to say. Like, it almost makes it not enjoyable. Pulp are wonderful. Like, a great band. They sounded amazing. Their new album is very good. And they played all these old hits. It was great. People are horrible. The general public are despicable. The O2 is disgusting. There are people just talking and vaping and being annoying and spilling drinks on me. I'm like, you're in a space designed for 20,000 people. You don't need to be near me. Do you know there's also something about bands of that era, like Britpop, for want of a better term? The people who go to these gigs are really into drinking. Like when I go to see Gene.
Yeah. It's people in their like 40s and 50s who are trying to have like reclaim a bit of their youth or something. Yeah.
So when I go and see these bands, like it'll happen when we go to see Gene later this year. It's like when I go to see Ash, when I go like anyone, there are people who can barely stand up from drinking. And there were these 2 guys next to me, because we had to move from vapors, we had to move from talkers, we had to move all these different places. Finally went to the back of the arena on the floor just to get away from people. And there were these 2 guys who, where somebody's that drunk where they don't even stand still for a second, though they're just like swaying and like gathering their footing again. And it was that and bumping into everyone. So there was like a 5-meter radius around them. people trying to move out of the way, and they were still knocking into people.
Yeah.
And it's just that vibe, it's not a
Yeah,
happy.
it
It's not
really
a happy vibe.
And it really detracts from your ability to just enjoy a great show or good musicians or yeah.
And so tonight we're going to the Royal Albert Hall to see Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's Yeah Yeah Yeah. And I think it is with an orchestra, or some of it is with an orchestra.
Yeah.
And obviously it's all seated at the Royal Albert Hall, isn't it, for most of the gigs?
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. And then I think
doing that.
Stop saying yeah then. And I think also we have seats in a box.
Oh,
which
wow.
So
Amazing.
there might only be about 10 or 12 people in that box, and that to me is heaven. It's like less
except
people
if they're vaping or drinking
or talking.
Yeah, or on their phones. I'm going to the Albert Hall tomorrow night to see Brandy Carlisle, who did not pop up at the Melissa Etheridge gig, by the way. But I didn't have a ticket. I thought I was going to be... I think when my friend was booking, I thought I was going to be with you in Italy for some reason. Because I think originally you'd said the last 2 weeks of June or something you were going to be in Italy.
Okay.
So anyway, I didn't book a ticket for Brandy, but it turns out they had a spare ticket. So you'll be at the Albert Hall tonight. I'll be there tomorrow, and as long as the nuclear missiles aren't deployed.
What's going on with Iran and Israel? What do you think is going to happen? What's your prediction?
If it was a quote unquote normal president in the White House, I would be hopeful that there would be serious talks and some kind of proper negotiation to stabilize the situation. But I actually have no idea. It's completely, it's like having a toddler in charge of it. It's ridiculous.
Well, can you explain something to me like I'm an idiot, which
probably not
is reality because I am an idiot. But why did Israel start bombing Iran the other day?
I think it's a conflict that goes back a long time. I think it's to do with Hezbollah and the Iranian state supporting Hezbollah and Hezbollah's attacks on Israel. I don't feel qualified to really explain it in any way. So I think it's probably best that I don't attempt to, but I think it's just a very long ongoing conflict between certain groups in Iran and ones that are to some extent supported or tolerated by the Iranian government. That's my understanding.
Imagine being sort of progressively minded or against what the state of Israel is doing and living in Israel. How could you deal with that reality?
Yeah, I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is... I don't know. I mean, he seems unstable. He seems completely hell-bent on destruction, on conflict, and I don't know whether it's for his own personal legacy. I don't quite understand what his motivation is. I don't know if he's doing this because he thinks it's his sort of God-given calling to do this, or if he's doing it because he's a narcissist. I don't know. I don't know if anyone really knows except maybe him and those around him. But it's I don't know. I'm too hot and bothered to even think about it. So,
but also, what's been going on in Gaza and in Palestine is so atrocious, and it's beyond even being shocked about it. Almost, you can't even.
No, it's completely normalized now, and especially now that Israel is waging this war against Iran. It's like, oh, and then there's Gaza. Gaza's just Gaza. It's just the usual. Just another 20 civilians shot dead while queuing up for food today. Nothing. No big deal.
What will
It's so
happen?
awful.
What would happen if somebody used a weapon like that in modern time? What would happen? Like, what do you think the chain of events would be?
What do you mean? Sorry, if like a
What?
nuclear missile was
Yeah,
deployed?
yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about the science of it, but presumably a lot of people, a very, very large number of people would be killed, and a lot more would then be very ill and probably die subsequently from the fallout of it.
So, say for instance, if somewhere in Iran or somewhere in Israel was hit by one of these weapons, what would the impact of us here in London be? Like, would there be fallout from the weapons?
I don't. Well, I see. I don't know. I don't think it would reach us here because, well, I think it would depend also on which way the prevailing winds were. Because I remember when Chernobyl happened, there was a lot of fear of the nuclear cloud or whatever they call it hitting northern Europe. But because the winds are predominantly going west to east, I think that was quite quickly ruled out. The nuclear fallout, whatever they call it. So I don't think, unless there was like a very, very strong weather pattern forcing air up from the eastern Mediterranean region or the Middle East, as they call it. But if that was being forced up towards northwest Europe, I don't think it would affect us. But then, the Chernobyl power plant accident might only be a fraction of the energy released by a nuclear warhead. So I don't know. I mean, that's it. I mean, we could literally all be we could literally be staring, in the fall of civilizations, if you like, in the face. So I don't know.
Do you have much fear of what's going on right now for yourself? I mean, obviously we feel desperately upset about what's happening to people in conflict zones and people who are being genocided. I mean, it's appalling. But do you have a fear of this threat, of this, like, I would have said existential threat, but this threat of that type of war affecting your life?
Yes and no. I mean, it's hard. Obviously, it's hard not to think about it. But then also, I have, on a pretty much a daily basis, almost an hourly basis, I also look up into the sky every day and think, well, we don't know everything that's in the universe, and at any given moment in any day, everything we know could be swallowed up by some giant meteor that's coming towards us from deep, the farthest reaches of the universe. Well, I mean, the universe has no end anyway, but you know what I mean. We could, everything we know could be wiped out in a nanosecond by something so much greater and moving so fast that we have no time to see it. And I know, scientists might what's the word? They might dispute that. Yeah, they might dispute that and say, no, we would definitely know, and it's like, well, again, we don't know everything that's in the universe. We haven't seen everything in the universe, and we never will. So how do we know? So I don't, in that sense, I live in a constant fear, a constant dread of everything disappearing. And that's something I should maybe go to therapy about. But yeah, so I kind of, again, it's not in my immediate environment. And if it was, I would probably feel very differently about it. Or maybe not. I think a lot of people, when you talk to people who live in conflict zones or have lived in conflict zones, they find there's an incredible human ability to just normalize existential threats and carry on as normal and compartmentalize things like that and just pretend they're not there. And obviously that manifests later on in life in different ways. But no, I don't.
That's another reason I got annoyed at those people who were causing chaos at the Eurostar.
You've got it in for that elderly couple.
Well, I was just stood there looking at them, and I thought, the fucking privilege that you live with, that you're taking a train from one city to another and you're moaning about which queue is faster. And there are people all over the world who are food, climate, water refugees, migrants, and you're there moaning. And it's just like, you want to shake people and say, fucking snap out of it,
But
like.
then, I've got a public facing job, and I have to sometimes remind myself, I don't know what those people are going through. I don't know what's happening in their life. They could be going through a fucking horrific situation in their personal lives, and that can often manifest in people presenting in ways that are, hostile or aggressive or
It's not like
mean.
you to be that empathetic, Sue. You're normally quick to anger with the people that wind you up.
All right. I just, yeah. All right. Fair enough. But I think it's important to consider other things. Although I'm vindicated, I don't know if you saw the comment. Michelle has vindicated me in my complaint about the people blocking access to seats at the Ron Sexsmith gig a couple of weeks ago. She said I'm not the arsehole, so I've made it through another week.
Well, Michelle only goes out of the house once a week, so I'm not sure she's qualified to talk about.
What does that? What does that mean? Does that mean people that don't go? But does that mean that people who don't go out of their homes have no right to opinions?
I'm saying that Michelle
is going to talk with your words. Be careful with your words, Sue.
Michelle is going to talk about concert etiquette when she hasn't been to a concert in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, you don't need to go to a concert to recognise arseholism.
Well, anyway, I don't know if those people did something as bad as you think they did. That was my comical way of saying that.
Okay.
Anyway, you can't talk about empathy and what people are going through when I tried to use the exact same argument about those people at the concert and you weren't having it. So
no, well,
what's good for the goose is good for the gander, Sue, as they say.
Well, anyway, I don't know if you've noticed, but was it last week or 2 weeks ago I was noting about how healthy my spider plant was.
Yes.
And then today I looked at it when I was just setting up my laptop here for the pod. I looked at it and I was like, it doesn't look right. And it is. It's all gone sort of very, and I don't think it's the heat. It's gone very limp and very pale. I don't know if you can see, but it's like a very lackluster green. So after saying about how like it was growing and it was healthy and I was feeding it and stuff, I don't know if I've over-fertilized perhaps, but now I'm having to eat my words.
Can you repot it?
Maybe I might take one of these babies and pot it up separately as an insurance policy in case the other one.
I can remember that famous line that your mum said of Josh only has to look at a plant and it grows.
It's true, and
Josh only has to look at a plant and it goes limp and lifeless.
No, quite the opposite. Maybe I haven't been looking at it enough. And then the other thing I was going to say, I just got back from the barber. I just had a beard trim this morning, and there was like a little pimple on my neck that they didn't cut it, but anyway, it's sore because when you get like the razor across it, whatever. But I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast, but I used to go to this place in London called the London School of Barbery, which should have been a clue, and it was for student barbers. Learning their craft. So they'd have gone through the whole theory side of it, and then they were in the practice stage, and they'd have to pass that. And so I would go because it was free haircuts and free beard trims. Did you ever go there?
Yeah, I went a couple of times.
Okay, so like sometimes I would go just for a beard trim. Sometimes I'd get my hair cut there. And I went this one time, and because they were short, they had too many trainees and not enough, customers. So they said to me, "Oh, look, I hope you don't mind, but today we're going to do a beard trim, but we're going to have two different people. So one's going to do like the right side of your face and one's going to do the left side of your face."
Glenn and Glenda.
I was
Victor, Victoria.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And so anyway, I sat down and then these two young guys came over and one of them was like a bit sort of cocky and confident, whatever. And he was like, I don't know why I'm imagining he was Australian. He probably wasn't Australian, but in my mind, it's just like, oh, hi, mate, blah, 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 my name's so-and-so. And he like shook my hand, and I was like, oh, hi, yeah. And then the other one was just like the polar opposite. He was like this very timid, very shy guy. And he was like, hi, my name is... And I couldn't even hear what he was saying because I'm partly deaf anyway. But and then he shook my hand with like the most trembling handshake I've ever had, and I was just like, "Oh God!"
Was
this
he
is
like
not...
Kith from
Yeah,
Futurama?
yeah, exactly. Kid from Futurama, like green,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh God, this isn't going to go well." And anyway, so I just shut my eyes, and for the next half hour, like one was working on that side, one was working on that side. I went home. That side of my face was fine. I went home on the tube, and that side of my face, I had about 16 pieces of tissue. I had so many cuts on my face from this like trembling barber trainee, and that was the last time I ever went. But I just thought of it this morning. I hadn't thought
I
about
don't know
that
if it
in years.
exists anymore, that place.
Probably
Yeah,
not. I mean,
you would always spend the next 4 weeks trying to recover from the haircut that they gave you because you
yeah.
had to let it grow out.
Not
But
every time. Sometimes it would be great, but
it was very rarely worth saving the money, like
no,
what
no.
they did to you. What was that barber that you had a crush on in Corinda, in Brisbane?
Sam. But
Can you
what was
sing
it?
us a little bit of your song that you wrote for him?
No, don't make me, don't embarrass me.
I think I remember it.
Yeah, well, we won't go there. But yeah, it was Sam at Corinda Barber, but it doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. Not
Have
that
you
I've googled, not that I've
have you
googled
been
it or anything.
stalking a little bit of online investigation?
But I remember the woman that worked there, the owner of it. She was queer, wasn't she? But she wasn't
I don't
like...
know.
It wasn't like she wasn't like out and like flamboyantly queer or anything like that. But I think her partner worked at QUT.
Okay.
I can't
Which,
remember
for
how I
anyone
knew...
listening who doesn't know, is a
Oh,
university.
yeah, it's like Queensland University of Technology, which is where I worked. And I think, yeah, and anyway, so I don't know what happened to Sam the barber.
How long ago was that? Like
Well,
15 years
when
ago
did
or
we live
something?
with Michelle and Corinda? 2000... I don't know. I can't
No,
remember. I mean, we
2009,
moved back
2009 or something.
before that, I think. Before that.
But yeah, it's so funny that you had a crush on this barber and then you wrote the song about him. Very
Yeah.
entertaining. Well,
I don't know if that will ever see the light of day, but
did you ever
yeah.
record it?
Yeah, I've got a demo of it somewhere, but
Oh, you should drop it.
I
Why
don't
don't you
know.
do an EP of all the songs of men you've had crushes on, which is most of
Oh,
all of your
that's all.
songs?
That's all my songs, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
almost.
oh, I thought you were going to say all the songs from like that era, like the Brisbane era.
Oh yeah, you could do a B&E mini EP.
Subtropical Depression EP.
Oh yeah, well you called it that, didn't you, on
Yeah, I
MySpace
think
or
that's...
something?
Yeah, on MySpace. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Um,
Wild
well,
times. Well, before we go, I'll apologize to Michelle for trying to drag her into our pettiness and saying that she never goes out of the house. I was trying to score cheap points on trying to project onto you and your behavior at the concert, and she was an unnecessary what do you call it? Like
a roadblock,
no, not a roadblock. Like I pulled her into it when she shouldn't have been.
an innocent bystander.
She was an innocent bystander.
Mhm.
Nothing. It had nothing to do with how many times she goes out of the house.
And what was I going to say about? Oh no, I don't know. I was going to say something about that incident, but no, I won't. I won't say it on air.
What incident?
No, at the Ron Sexsmith gig with the aerial acrobatics gymnastics that I had to perform. And I went to another gig last night, which I don't really have time to tell you more about, but it wasn't as... It was after the Melissa Etheridge high. It was a bit underwhelming, so it wasn't quite as good an experience. So is it tonight you're going to see the Yeah Yeah Yeahs?
Yeah, so I'll get a opportunity to get angry at people in a public setting again.
Okay, so next week we can talk about that gig. I can tell you about Brandy Carlisle. And I'm going to see you on Saturday, I think, at Tatum's party. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And
Okay.
then we can talk about it all if we are all still alive and haven't been blown up by
Which is not, it's not given, is
superpowers.
it? So in the
Yeah.
meantime, I think I'm going to go and sit in front of a fan and get a wet rag and mop on my brow.
And if the world does end, and this is for some reason the last thing that you listen to, I'm sorry that this is that's all you've got.
So glad you were able to join us on this journey. And yeah, I hope this digital archive exists for future civilizations to pore over and wonder what the fuck we were doing with our lives.
Well, hopefully nothing survives of anything, ours or anybody else's.
Yeah, and then we can just do it all over again in another millennium.
The amoeba can start again, afresh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I wonder if my spider plant will survive.
No, it might not make it another day by the looks of it.
All right, folks. In the meantime, you can find out what I'm up to if you look for me online at Josh and the Jumpstarts on Instagram or on Spotify. You can stream my music. You can follow this podcast wherever you're listening or watching. We're now on not only Apple Podcasts, we're on quite a few podcast, providers. Because I was thinking the other day, we're on Apple Podcasts, but a lot of the world doesn't have an iPhone. They use Android. And so I've found, whatever the apps are on Android that people use to listen to podcasts. So we should be available on those now. Or you can look for us on Instagram at Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong.
Yeah. And
what
then
about
you can,
where can we find you?
You can go to fatgayvegan.com. If you want to come to a fundraising dinner that I'm hosting in July, the information is on my website. We're raising money for an animal sanctuary and the vegan charity Made in Hackney, and it's at Unity Diner in Shoreditch on July 7th. So get information, Fat Gay Vegan or Fat Gay Vegan on Instagram, and come to an event, come to the queer open mic that Josh and I host. And all the links are always in the video description on YouTube. I don't know, are there links on Spotify and other podcasts?
Yeah, there are. When I remember to do the HTML formatting correctly, there are.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we'll be back in your feeds this time next week. Until then, stay safe. Don't criticize old people in queues, and try and avoid nuclear fallout.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.